Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 30 for December 30th, 2016. Hey everybody, Dan Rubino joined here with Zach Bowden for the last Windows Central Podcast of 2016. What's often regarded as one of the worst years in a long time for many reasons. Although I guess Microsoft had a good year, and we'll be talking a little bit about that as well as what we expect for 2017. I heard more builds of Windows may come out in 2017. We'll also give a little sneak preview about CES, which is going to be kicking off in the first week of January in Vegas. And we'll be talking about some other things like a leaked build that came out this week that Zach got to do a tour of, as well as finally revealing some new features. I'll talk about SSDs, which is my new favorite topic because it's so much stuff to go into, as I reviewed the 960 EVO from Samsung. And there's also that question I answer, which I thought was kind of interesting, was whether or not putting a skin on your laptop will make it hotter, which seemed weird to me at first, but apparently there's disagreements over this, but I hopefully have settled that. Zach, how are you doing on this near end of the year?
I'm not too bad. I've just realised this will technically be the first episode of 2017 when it comes out on Monday. So
True.
Happy New Year to everybody listening.
Assuming the world doesn't end.
Yeah, because I mean, it always ends every year. So Happy New Year to everybody listening to the rebroadcast. If not, Merry New Year for upcoming, because tomorrow is New Year's Eve and I'm going out to party. Are you, Dan?
No, I do not go out. I do not care for the human race and prefer to spend it with those closest to me, which is not the rest of humanity.
Turtle. And
I also hate New Year's. I think it's literally, I don't want to say the worst holiday, but it's just really dumb to me. But that's just because I'm very much of a cynic. It's like, okay, the calendar changed, but I get it why people get, it's that concept to start over. But it's all nonsense. We're all going to die anyway. Anyway, so.
Good foot to start the podcast on.
Yes. Zach and I were talking about before this podcast started just about how grouchy everybody is right now on social media, Twitter, and comments, and everybody just seems a little salty at the end of the year. I think everybody's just kind of done. And I think that's rubbing off on me a little bit, although for me it's always funny. But anyway, let's dive into it. What's the first topic we're taking a look at,
We are
Zach?
going to dive into the new leaked build first, because hooray, we had a leaked build for once. It's been a while since a leaked build showed up on the internet, and it always seems to happen around Christmas. Back in the olden days, if you were in following Microsoft and Windows back in 2007, 2008, builds would leak all the time of Windows, because there wasn't an insider program. The only way people could try out in development builds of Windows was if they ever leaked, and it used to happen often. So not so much now with the insider program. Builds leak rarely, and it's kind of good news for Microsoft because they kind of control what goes through the insider program. So if they have a feature that they're working on and they don't want to reveal it yet, they just hold it back and compile a build that doesn't have it, and then they give that to insiders and no leaks happen, and it's good news for them, bad news for us. So it's always nice when a build does leak every so often, and this time build 14997 leaks on Christmas Day, or a bit before Christmas Day, so that was annoying. But it actually has some new features, and it's from an internal development branch, so it's from the branch rs_1core_base. Who knows what that means? I guess it's a branch that focuses on the base one core stuff. And it has some new features that build 14986 didn't have. So diving straight into it, first and foremost, it had the new blue light feature, which is something that we wrote about several weeks ago. It's finally showing up and will be in the next Insider release. And basically what that does is, I think Dan knows more than this to me, but if you're looking at a monitor with monitors emit a blue light, and that tricks your brain into thinking it's looking at sunlight. And if you're using, monitors late at night and you go straight to bed, your brain can't turn off properly or something or the other. And with this blue light function, you turn it on, the screen will go a nice warmish color, so it's kind of more relaxing to your brain and stuff.
And right now, people do this, and this is actually an interesting trend because iOS now has this built in. It's called Night Watch, I believe, and Android had it and then didn't have it, and I forgot what the status is with it. And Windows users have had it for years with a third-party app called F.Lux, and I'm actually a big fan of F.Lux. I've been using it for a long time. It even hooks up into your Hughes lights, which is kind of cool. But yeah, Zach's exactly right about this. So it gives the screen a warmer tint to it. And the idea here is that it's not like looking at sunlight, because that screws up your circadian rhythms. Our brains are tuned to sunlight. So it's definitely a neat feature. We don't know if it's coming to mobile, though, right?
That's correct. We don't know. As far as I'm aware, it isn't. That could change down the line, but as of right now, in the internal builds, it's not there for mobile.
Yeah, and I believe this gets into an issue with the screen technology and what you can control. And I think that was part of the issue with Android too, although I need to look more into that. But I believe because not every display type is the same. For instance, like AMOLED and LCD have different technologies and how you would go about doing this sort of feature. And so I'm not really too sure what they can do with mobile, if it would only be for the Lumias or even if those are capable of it. And that's going to be one of those things where we're going to have to kind of wait and see. I hope something like that comes to mobile, because I'm actually a big fan of this kind of technology. It's just easier on the eyes. But yeah, because we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's not in the latest builds. That could eventually show up, but with what Microsoft is testing right now, it's there on desktop, not on mobile. And that's kind of a trend recently for a lot of things. Mobile has seen the least amount of changes with the Creators Update compared to the Anniversary Update and Threshold 2 and whatnot, which is interesting. I mean, it does make you think, what are they planning to do down the line? I know there are improvements to Continuum coming. We don't know if that will be Redstone 2 or Redstone 3 at this point now, because we are getting... There's only a few weeks left of development before they consider Redstone 2 feature complete. So they really haven't got long left to...
Well, I mean, do we know that definitively? The only reason I asked is because builds now is in, May, right? And so is there any correlation, do we know of, with... I remember there was originally March was the date that was sort of batted around for Redstone 2, but now is... the connection to builds is going to be more around there, so maybe it does buy them more time?
I haven't heard of Microsoft changing schedules for Redstone 2. I still have heard March is where they want to get it out to the public. I believe May and build will be more for Redstone 3 stuff, as that's when we're expecting to see Project Neon and a bunch of other stuff like that. So Redstone 2 is still scheduled for early 2017. It's still labelled as version 17.03 internally, which, if you don't know how the versioning works, 17 being the year 2017, 03 being the month, which is March. So, I mean, although to be fair, Microsoft did give the anniversary update version, what was it, 16.07, which is July 2016, even though it came out in August. So around March is what we're saying.
Right. So could be late March.
Could be
but
fair,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, we are coming down to what seems like the nitty-gritty of... we haven't really seen too much except for these things, but there still seems to be a lot more that hopefully will start coming out.
Yeah, I mean, more changes. There's a few changes to Microsoft Edge, which are very interesting. There's now a new option to set tabs aside, which essentially, you press the button, all the tabs that are currently open in your window get literally pushed to the side into a little sort of area that you can click on. Swings out a window to the right, and it's got all your tabs in there, and you can click on one or restore all of them if you wish. So it's very nice if you're, doing something, then need to start, just save them all for later. For, if you're doing a research paper or something. Then I think that's pretty much it for Edge. There's a few more flags in the About flags area if you're into that. Then,
if you don't know, for those who aren't listening, if you type in About : flags into your address bar, pretty much in any browser, but in this case Edge, it gives you what are options that are not officially available, that are in testing, that you can implement. And it's kind of neat. Some of them, we talked about some of these before in articles, like the TCP fast open and stuff, and so it is kind of fun to experiment with these.
Yeah, what else is new? We've got a new out-of-box experience, which is actually quite a big deal. So Microsoft is redesigning the setup experience, which when you turn on a PC for the first time, you get the option to choose your language. Then you sign into your Microsoft account, turn on Cortana, OneDrive, so on and so forth. They're redesigning that again, and they're now adding Cortana integration. So I guess this will be useful for home hub devices whose main method of input would be voice. So you can now... Cortana will walk you through the out-of-box experience. You'll say, hey, welcome to Windows 10. Here's the Express settings. Would you like to use Express settings? Then you have the option to say yes or no. There are some areas that don't work with voice still, so typing in a Microsoft account, of course, you will need a mouse and keyboard for that. I'm not sure how they're planning to get around that. I assume if it's a device similar to the Amazon Echo, setting it up will be done through another device, because if you buy an Amazon Echo, setting it up is you turn it on and you go to the Amazon website and you set it up through there. I assume a similar thing would happen for devices with no screens.
That's how we do it on Xbox too, right? When we link apps to our account.
Yeah. With a device with a screen, however, could be very beneficial. You don't have to touch it. You just say yes, yes, hi, yes, and it sets it all up for you, which is very, very nice. So that's a very interesting thing. Hopefully we should see more of that with the next Insider build, because it's still pretty broken. It is there, it does work, you can set it all up, but the UI is a bit iffy and whatever else, so keep that in mind. And I think that's the most noteworthy changes. I'm not entirely sure if there's anything else, not that I can remember. There's lots of small changes, like the microphone icon has been changed slightly for Cortana. You can now make it so the Windows... Is it Win-C? I can't. What's the command for Cortana? I don't remember the command.
Yeah, it's Win-C.
Yeah, if you do the Windows key and C, you can make it so it automatically starts listening now rather than opening Cortana UI and vice versa. So that's very nice. So yeah, lots of little changes. Theming support's there now. If you install this build and download a theme from the Windows Store, and you can actually apply it and you can actually customize it. So you can customize the color, wallpaper, sounds, and cursors, I believe. So that's kind of interesting. Microsoft may be planning to charge for some of these themes in the Windows Store as well, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I guess
would it be them charging for, or would it be open
whoever
to
makes
developers?
It, I guess. I guess the developers. I mean, that would make sense if the developers bundling, original photos and sounds and stuff.
Sure.
But I mean, you can make your own themes. Windows has had theming support for years. It's just now they're making it more consumer friendly by giving consumers an easy place to go and buy and download them.
I mean, for me, I want kind of everything in the store.
Mm-hmm.
I hate gaming now when I have to download Steam. Like, it just annoys me that I have to have an app running in the background and checking for updates.
I'm
it's
exactly the same.
I just want to go to the store, check for app updates, just one place. So I'm a big fan of putting as much stuff into the store as possible.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything. Again, not much is happening on the mobile side of things right now. I know that's sad news, but I think with Windows 10 coming to ARM, the end goal is to have that run on phones anyway. Although that's a fair way away, that should eventually happen, I think.
Yeah, I guess that can kind of segue into what we expect for 2017.
Right.
It's just interesting because if there was ever a low point for Windows 10 Mobile, this right now is probably it. Although we could probably say another month, it may be even worse. But the reason I kind of point that out is because I bet for the holiday seasons and Christmas, particularly in the US, a lot of people probably got new devices and those weren't Windows phones, meaning that there were people switching from their existing Lumia or some other device to an Android or an iPhone, meaning that market share is going to drop even more significantly. Sure, the Idol 4S is on T-Mobile, and it's actually gotten very good reviews. I don't just mean from the press, but I mean from actual users. If you go to T-Mobile's site, people seem to be happy with it. Nonetheless, that's just 1 out of 4 of the major carriers in the US. HP Elite 3, we've talked endlessly about, is not really a consumer device, and there's no discernible impact we're expecting to really affect, the consumer angle there. I guess this raises the question of what 2017 is going to be like for the few mobile fans that are still around. PC is going to be extremely interesting because of the ARM stuff, which we don't really actually expect until probably after summer, right? Around Redstone 3.
I mean, Microsoft so far have only confirmed that the Snapdragon 835 will be able to support Windows 10. I've heard a few other ARM chips will, although Microsoft hasn't said anything about this yet, so I'm not saying anything. I guess whenever the Snapdragon CPUs are available, OEMs can start building and releasing them. So I guess as soon as then, which I guess is after summer. I wouldn't know. So, yeah. So, a little while to wait. I mean, like you say, I think 2017 will be pretty depressing if you're a mobile user because Microsoft's focus right now is obviously full Windows 10 and getting that everywhere. As Dan says that Dan assumes the end goal for Windows 10 Mobile is to have it run on lower end phones and have the full Windows 10 ARM whenever that's ready to run on phones, run on the higher end stuff, which would make sense because a Surface phone, for example, could run full Windows 10 with a mobile shell. Then when you dock it, it just turns into full Windows 10, which would make sense. Which is kind of what Microsoft is doing with Continuum already, except obviously we know Continuum isn't as fully fledged as a full desktop. That may change with Redstone 3, in which case 2017 will be very interesting for mobile. But I think a lot of mobile users are still using older handsets, such as the 930, the 830, and anything prior to the 930 or the 1520. You guys are going to miss out on a lot. Microsoft is no longer building Windows 10 Mobile for you guys. You may get smaller changes and features, but you got to think, Windows 10 Mobile introduced its biggest features were Windows Hello and Continuum.
In other words, you're saying it's hardware. What's coming to Windows 10 Mobile will be very hardware dependent.
Yeah, those features only work on the newer stuff. And obviously, your Lumia 930, when it got Windows 10, it got the universal platform and the new start screen and whatever else. That was about it. And obviously new app updates. It didn't get any of the new Windows 10 Mobile features. And I reckon that trend will stay true. I mean, if you're buying a 950 now, if you have a 950, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I'm pretty sure Microsoft are going to keep giving you things as often as they can for the next year or so. But when the Surface Phone finally arrives, it will be different. And from then onwards, I'm not sure how existing Windows 10 Mobile users will be treated.
Right. And that's because we're kind of expecting a category shift in devices. For instance, inking, we've talked about, honestly. I mean, that seems like a clear and obvious thing that they would put into mobile, in which case that's not going to be able to be done in like a 950 or something else. There's stuff with the mixed reality that's potentially there that may happen. Of course, the Windows Hello stuff, the Continuum stuff, Windows 10 on ARM stuff. So a lot of this will be sort of, I guess, dependent on technology. And that, I guess, raises, two things I think we should look out for would be, what happens at Mobile World Congress? Is there going to be any more OEM partners announcing any kind of device? And at this point, we're not even talking like flagship, this is going to save just any device that's going to sort of keep fans of Windows 10 on mobile happy for a few more months. There's been rumors of HP doing sort of like a consumer version to Elite X3, and we've talked about that as something certainly plausible because they have not ruled that out themselves, and HP and Microsoft seem to be working very closely together, but we actually don't have anything definitive. So that happens in February, I believe it's the end of February, in Barcelona. And then, of course, the other big thing would be Build in May, which this year it's happening in Seattle, thankfully. I'm not a big fan of San Francisco. And it'll be really interesting there when they sort of talk about new features and their roadmap and stuff that's coming. Does mobile get brought up? Last year, famously, there was nothing about mobile. And this gets a little bit weird too, because technically speaking, mobile is not a separate operating system. It's just a different SKU of the one core system. So I don't know. It's going to be, but they may want to, mention mobile a bit more, because they do have this image problem, right? Where everybody, I think the tech press now is starting to get the idea that what Windows 10 really is, that it's this one operating system that can basically live on any kind of device, regardless of its configuration. And I think that's starting to sink in, but then there's still the stark reality in the contrast of, well, okay, but there's really nothing out there that you guys are releasing either. So how do you reconcile those kind of things? And I think that's going to be kind of, the interesting thing we'll have to kind of look forward to in the first part of 2017.
I mean, I would hope that if they are going to show off Windows 10 Mobile, it would be the Continuum stuff, because that is a big deal thinking about it. I mean, if Windows 10 ARM is still a ways away from mobile, then you might as well talk about the things you are working on for mobile, unless they've because I mean, it could be possible that they have cancelled their Continuum plans for mobile and are now just focused on bringing Continuum through Windows 10 ARM, which would be upsetting, of course, if you're a 950 user. So it will be interesting to see what happens in 2017. I'm going to be optimistic about it and hope that Windows 10 Mobile hasn't been left in the dirt. But I mean, who knows with Microsoft?
We need a long-term roadmap.
I know
of what the actual plans are for these different SKUs, the cores. Well, we already know one core is basically done. They're just refining it and kind of improving it. Now it seems to be composable shells and this idea of one shell that seems to be being worked on right now. I guess we sort of need more information about that. What the actual thing, because there is a plan here, right? I mean, Microsoft, we have heard, do have a plan for mobile. We're just not privy to it, at least not in full detail, Zach, and I keep getting bits of it. It's sort of like, what's that analogy with the you're blind and you're trying to feel for an elephant. You know,
I had no idea.
oh, you never heard that? Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
like, if like I covered your eyes and brought you to a room and had you like touch something, like you could feel parts of the elephant, but you wouldn't be able
know.
to figure out that
Yeah.
it's an actual elephant. That's kind of what we're doing right now, is trying to figure out what their plans are. And then, and of course, the tough part is what you bring up. It's things change. So they do have plans, and then like for all we know, something like McLaren years ago, like that was a thing being actively worked on. We had rumors coming out about it, and then all of a sudden I got that report that it got canceled. So who knows? But yeah. I mean, then I was going to say Chris Capicella had was on Windows Weekly last week and brought up, he was talking a little bit about mobile and their plans there. And, he kind of reiterated things we've been saying for a long time, but that the idea behind the whole Surface program is about category creation and not just doing another phone is not something that they're interested in doing. I've been saying this since October 2015, that when the 950 and XL came out, if you look at those, they're okay phones. It was just like at that same event, they announced Surface Book, and then they had the Surface Pro 4, and they had a HoloLens earlier in the year, and now they've done Surface Studio. When you look at those devices and you look at the 950, like that's something that doesn't fit. Like those devices just look pedestrian compared to what they're doing. And then I explained, like, well, those were old Nokia phones that they just sort of brought to market, and they refined them a little bit, but there was no, built from the ground up kind of thing. And so, and Chris Capicella basically kind of said the same thing, that, whatever they do in mobile is going to be something, category defining for them. And that's interesting, if only just because it reinforces what we're saying for a long time. The problem is, of course, is how long do we have to wait? He did mention that the Surface team is going to have, Panos' team is going to have stuff, in 2017. But what that means exactly, we are still expecting Surface Book 2. I guess we can segue away from mobile. Surface Book 2, I guess Surface Pro 5.
Hopefully, I'm looking forward to, a Surface 4 with an ARM processor.
Yeah, and then there's the question, what do they call it? Do they just call that Surface 4? Or they skip right to 5? Because now they've missed a whole cycle. But yeah, so we're still expecting whatever that non-pro Surface device to be the first Windows 10 on ARM device would make sense, I think. If you think of, we've talked about this before, what Surface is about showing what Windows 10 can be in its ultimate case. If they're pushing Windows 10 on ARM, Surface 4 or Surface 5, they call it that, would be that ideal device. And they need something in a 10-inch range, I would say. It's, especially something with LTE. I'd be a big fan of that. So,
I mean, a Surface 4 that has an ARM processor that lasts days on end or whatever, with, obviously a Snapdragon processor is less battery hungry compared to a full-on Intel Core M.
I was going to say, people need to understand with the Snapdragon, the battery benefits are specifically in the standby times. They're actually running a full capacity, like 100% CPU. The Atom and Snapdragon will probably actually use the same amount of battery, but it's about the ability to resume, like your smartphone. You just click that button and and when it's in standby, you get that great battery. Like that's the experience that they really want from ARM.
And that makes sense on a 10-inch tablet.
Yeah, especially with the LTE thing.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
Because the Surface 3 had at least the option for LTE, and so I'd be very excited about that. Hopefully something will come
next year. We've also probably got. Well, we know we've got Project Scorpio stuff since Microsoft did announce last year that Scorpio would be coming at the end of 2017. So I'm assuming we will hear more about Scorpio at E3 in June next year. Hopefully a full unveiling, specs, what it looks like, pricing, all of that, which will be very nice.
The most important thing is what it looks like.
Well, of course, we need to know what it looks like. And maybe we might see some exclusive games for it. Hopefully Halo 6, although I think Halo 6 is still over a year away, unfortunately. I don't know. But lots of Xbox stuff. So if you're an Xbox fan, there will be 2017 is going to be a great year for you. And finally, Alex Kipman, who's lead on the HoloLens team, tweeted something very interesting yesterday. I think it was. He said, "I've just seen the future, be born in front of my eyes." And he was like, "Remember this date which was obviously December 29th. I wonder what he could be talking about. HoloLens 2, maybe? Surface phone?
He got that new Nintendo. Yeah, I saw that too. I saw you retweet that. Yeah, definitely very interesting. HoloLens is had a kind of a quiet year, yet not. They made some big deals with companies who are actually going to be adopting and or already are adopting HoloLens to be distributed to employees. There's an elevator company with a crazy name as an example. And so they are making those kind of big, important deals. And, not to like gloss over that, because if you look at Surface Hub, the big news that came out about that was Surface Hub actually sold way more than they anticipated and allowed them to drive up the price. And now itself is $1 billion business for them. So the idea of replicating that with HoloLens is huge. It's one thing to come out with a product. It's another thing to go, okay, companies are actually very interested in adopting this. But it's HoloLens was revealed in January 2015, and we haven't seen any significant revisions. If you think about it, I used, I believe, a Cherry Trail Atom processor, and what we were just talking about with Atom processors and limitations and Intel. So if you're getting HoloLens already on an Atom processor and you get a Snapdragon 835 and Windows 10 support, what does that mean for a second generation HoloLens?
It's very interesting. I mean, something in the
cellular connectivity, eSIM,
it lasts longer, slightly maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's of course the big innovations with HoloLens. I think that we'll be seeing. Of course, will be improved battery life. The components will get smaller and lighter. The field of vision will likely increase too, and they'll improve the optics.
That's the biggest thing I think many people were upset about was the field of vision.
But if they can make this thing, for a fact they're prototyping new versions because that's just what they do. It's not like they created this this is the last one we'll ever make. So of course they're working on next generation stuff, and it just you can see it, it's 50% smaller, all this. There's going to be some, thing that they're going to announce with this, and it'll be a bigger deal where people start going, because right now people still see HoloLens and they're like, that's awesome, but, it's still $3,000. It's still being sold for developers. It's not, the commercial angle is not there yet for consumers, but that will change. And there will be a moment where it gets small enough, light enough, better battery life, throw in cellular connectivity and bring down the price where it now starts to make sense for consumers as a thing. And so we may start to see that happen in 2017 as well. And I there's little reason to think that HoloLens won't go to ARM as well. So
I'm pretty sure Microsoft said recently as well that they think 2017 will be the year of the VR. Or something along those lines. Maybe it wasn't Microsoft, but they are working on VR stuff.
Their slogan was 2017 is the year VR is it VR? Not VR. Mixed reality goes mainstream.
Right. So I mean, mixed reality is that's HoloLens, that's standard VR headsets, and we know Microsoft's already working on a lot of stuff for VR. As the Windows 10 Creators Update will include HoloShell, which is, I guess, the code name, I don't know, that Microsoft is building basically the HoloLens UI into Windows 10, and you can obviously plug in an Oculus or a Vive and have the Windows holographic shell run within there, just like it would on a HoloLens, except, of course, it would be in a virtual environment. So lots of stuff happening in the world of hollowness. 3D Paint is a big thing for HoloLens. Obviously, the HoloShell and stuff. It is really quite exciting, I think.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see a lot of there's a potential for them to sort of do what they kind of did in October 2015, which was a momentous day. They had Surface Pro 4, Surface Book, they had 2 phones, they had Microsoft Band 2 come out, and all sorts of software announcements and stuff. And that was a really cool thing that I think people would like to see again. And this time they could do it with Scorpio, Surface Pro 5, Surface Book 2, Surface Pro, just a non-pro Surface, HoloLens 2. There's still the wearable space, which they are not done with. Band 2 has been obviously discontinued, But that doesn't mean that they've abandoned the concepts that drive it, specifically Microsoft Health. And, I think I shared with you recently some inside stuff that showed basically that is still going forward. They're still experimenting with different types of wearables, so they are definitely not done in that area. What I think happened is they reevaluated what Band 2 sought to do, what it accomplished, where it failed, and are basically reevaluating, various components about it, for its durability. That's a big problem. My good friend Seth, his band broke 4 times, with the same tearing. Mark had that happen twice. I don't wear mine enough recently to have had it happen, but I do have a few pixels failing. So they do have some issues there they need to resolve. And wearables are still not an easy thing to accomplish. And it's like, we talked about this before, the Internet of Things and home automation, where it's still a new enough field where they can still innovate around here. And, Microsoft has the potential. The Band 2 and Band 1, I would say, were really cool devices. They stood out from some of the other ones out there, but they weren't radically different enough where it was such a compelling case to get one. So the question is, I guess okay, now that the hardware division's still all under Panos and his group, again, take the analogy of category creation. What can they do in the wearable space that is truly different enough from what Fitbit is doing, from what Apple is doing, from what Android and Samsung are doing in that space? And that's interesting because I don't know. There's a lot of limitations here, mostly battery. There's also, of course, UI issues. I have an Apple Watch 2. Don't wear it because it's a beautiful device, but its UI is just awful. I mean, I love the clock and I love the little widgets that basically run on it. Super useful. But as soon as you go to the app launcher, it's like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And this idea of running apps on it is just bad. That's not all Apple's fault. A lot of it's just, like I said, it's engineering limitations. But there's a lot of room here for innovation and getting it right. And I think that's what they're going to be trying to do. As much as I love the band, I still miss a lot of aspects about it, specifically its notification systems. I thought was some of the best around. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what those guys are doing to sort of push that category further.
I like to think Panos Panay walked into the prototype room, saw whoever was working on the band with his band 3 and went, "Put that down. What the hell is that? This is what I've got planned." And they went, "Okay, well, that's way better. It's a Surface Watch."
Yeah, I mean, and what the joke, of course, was that when Ben Rudolph did that video and Panos had a white band on, so the official explanation for that was
just an
employee. And it made
one.
sense that was the Band 2 prototype given to people who worked on the band team. And the only reason that kind of made sense was we knew there were Xbox Ones that came out for the guys that created the guys and girls that created that device, and it was white at the time, where all the so Microsoft has done that in the past. So it's like, oh, okay, and it turns out it was a lie. That really was the Band 3 prototype, which, as we later learned, wasn't radically different from what we saw in Band 2, but. Clearly, Panos and his team were evaluating and testing it, and for some reason, it didn't pass muster. And this is the problem with leaks. We knew there was a Surface Mini, and that got canceled. It stinks learning about things only to hear they get canceled. But that's sort of that's a danger when you get when you want us to dig deeper on these topics.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this before on the podcast. A lot of things Microsoft have planned internally never get leaked and get cancelled all the time. I'm pretty sure that they've had ideas for just super futuristic things that would be so cool that we don't know about, and they've just gone, well, we obviously can't do this, cancel. And and we would never know about it, and everybody goes on about their normal day. It's the same thing when we talk about a thing publicly that they haven't announced and then they cancel it. They are under no obligation to bring something to market if we talk about it. They can go, well, I mean, it doesn't actually work. It was a good idea. We started working on it. Turns out we can't actually get it working the way we want. Cancel. That's kind of basically what happened to the McLaren. They had the idea. It was work. It was buggy. People didn't get it. it was a great idea in hindsight, but obviously the final outcome wasn't exactly what they wanted. Therefore, it got cancelled, and it can happen all the time.
And there's strategic changes that have happened at Microsoft. One, of course, was the reallocation of the divisions, right? So, mobile was initially under Elop when he came over with Nokia, and they took that away, gave it to Panos, So there's been that consolidation of the hardware group. But there's also been this thing that Nadella has talked about, which is that they have Microsoft Research, which does it's its own branch. It's just researchers and academics who are just doing exploratory stuff in technology. They're the people who are always filing for patents on things. The problem was Microsoft Research was very separate from the consumer division that was actually creating the hardware. And what Nadella sought to do is saying that we got to reduce the delta between when we create something with Microsoft Research and when we bring it to market. Because right now, for the last few years, there's always like miles apart. I mean, we've seen stuff from Microsoft Research from 10 years ago that we still haven't seen in a consumer device. And that doesn't mean everything that research creates goes consumer, but what I think is going to happen, and what may be happening even with the wearable stuff, is if you're on the band team and you're like, okay, this is what we have, this is the technology we have to work with and our goals, and we're building this device. And then all of a sudden some changes happen and like, hey, that stuff that Microsoft Research was testing, we could now maybe start testing it with the band stuff and maybe look to bring it to market, And that gets complicated because you're talking about maybe mass producing something that hasn't been mass produced before. This happens with lenses for cameras. This happens especially with batteries. This happens especially with display technologies, where you can create one in a lab, but then it's another question of going, okay, let's mass produce that on a scale and have consistency and be able to source all the raw materials for that. And that's the issue sort of with Surface too, where they take like the Surface Book. It's a solid block of magnesium that weighs like a pound, and then they basically drill it down until it's the base, and it's totally insane. But if you think about that, there could be a lot of newer stuff that's coming, and that could be why products change too, is because they have access to newer stuff. So
I mean, it's even the same story with software. There's a lot of software features Microsoft has planned. They start coding it, then they realize, well, this isn't really a priority right now. Shove it to the back of the queue. I mean, the people bar, excuse me, the people bar, the My People thing coming with the creators update has been in the works for 2 years. The code for it first started showing up before Windows 10 RTM'd in 2015. And obviously, it's now finally showing up in 2017. So that's just a good example of things that they have planned at the time, and then obviously more important things show up.
I'm just thinking from our own work environment, like there's just a Trello board of like cards. And for people who don't use Trello, they're not gonna get this joke at all. But if you work in an organization where you use Trello, like that, there's like all these like backlog of like things that they need to do, and people just keep pushing back dates. And it's just like, I'll get to it, but it's like Christmas time, and it's funny because I'm watching a lot of these Microsoft people. They're all on vacations, like for 2 weeks at a time. They're doing like these world tours. Like I'm at home here, really still covering. I'm like, man, I clearly sometimes I think I have the wrong job, and sometimes I think I have the right job. But
I'm pretty sure we found a card that was dated sometime in 2015 from you, which was the Surface Book review.
Yeah, well, I kind of made up for it with the Surface Book.
Performance space. It's true. Yeah. But no, it is really funny. I mean, you talk about working over Christmas. I did a build video on Christmas Day.
That's true.
That's dedication. I should get a raise. Wink,
that's
wink.
True.
Exactly.
I can say that's true, and you deserve it because I don't actually allocate your raise. So.
Oh well, I mean, damn it, talk to the wrong person. Should we move on?
Yes.
To the SSD, because you're a fan of SSDs for reasons. I mean, I get the SSD craze, but you're a bit too crazy about it, I think.
Well, I think the funny thing about SSDs that I find is that it's still considered to be a luxury kind of item and a commodity for devices, so specifically in laptops. So this is sort of one of the demarcations between a cheap laptop and like an ultrabook, is his ability to use SSDs. And so for those who don't know, there's traditional hard disks that are in a lot of PCs that physically spin. You have 5,400 RPMs and 7,200, I believe, is the faster one. And then you have SSD, which is it's basically digital memory. It's what's like your smartphone uses, the same thing. It's like SD cards and all this. And there's a lot of varying technology there. And I don't even want to talk about that stuff because it gets super complicated. But there's been a lot of improvements with this stuff. It's still expensive, but the benefits are, of course, it's less likely to break since there's no moving parts to it. Even if you drop your device kind of thing, it's definitely way faster. There are also, and it's more expensive and it's harder to source, There's also downsides, it's like anything else. The more you read and write to it, it can damage it long term and cause, eventually it to be not as efficient. So they're not perfect, but what you see, one of the things that drive up laptops is the SSD because it allows them to then create thinner devices with faster performance, but that comes at a cost to you. And so Samsung has one of the leading SSD companies out there that makes this stuff, has two new ones on the market or just coming to the market, 960 EVO, 960 Pro. And so these were updates for the 950 EVO, 950 Pro. And so I got one and threw it into my Razer Blade because I thought if there's one laptop that people would be looking to sort of upgrade, would be that one. Not that there's anything wrong with the Razer Blade. In fact, what I found out is their SSD is actually pretty good. So they use what's called a PM951, also a Samsung piece. It's just an OEM version, basically, of the 950 Pro. And now they started using, apparently, the PM961, which is even more performant. And so I threw in a 960 EVO, though, to see, is it good? and it is good, but it's, these are expensive. A 1 terabyte EVO goes for about $480. And, the 960 Pro is about $140, I think, more than that. But what's cool about the Pro is it comes in a 2 terabyte version, which we haven't seen before for SSDs. That's the other sort of limitations, that they don't go as high for storage. But a 2 terabyte version is pretty insane when you think about it. Of course, it also costs $1,200, so which is about the cost of most, a good Ultrabook. So, the performance is very good. What you see mostly the improvements are, though, is for write speeds, which is something consumers don't typically notice. So for those who don't know, there's read and write speeds. Reads are what you mostly use. It's you install an app and now you click it and it runs. It's reading from that disk and launching it. Same thing for video games and the apps you install. Music you're playing in media too. Writing, though, is you do it when you install apps. You do it when you copy a large amount of files over. If you're copying like a single MP3, yeah, you'll notice it, but a faster device ain't going to make a big difference there. But for people who go like, oh, I need to copy over, 15 gigs of data today, having a faster drive is going to matter there for write speeds. And this is one area where Windows laptops typically lag behind the higher end Apple laptops, like the MacBook Pro, is in write speeds. There are solutions for those, and that includes, these kind of SSDs. And we put it into Mark's Razer Blade, and I have it at my Razer Blade. And, for someone like Mark, who does that's our videographer for people to know, and he'll shoot 4K video and he'll render it in Adobe Premiere. This SSD makes a huge difference for him. In fact, we see a 3 to 4 times performance improvement for him. And so, I don't know. It's neat if you could afford these things, but they're still luxury items, and not everybody needs to, go out and get it. For me, using the Razer Blade, it feels faster. It resumes a little bit quicker, but launching games is exactly the same. So the reason you buy the Razer Blade typically for gaming is not going to really benefit from getting a faster SSD. So maybe save your money. I don't know, but I feel like Samsung's building these drives now for future hardware, because what's happening now is you're kind of reaching the peak capacities devices. It's the processor, it's the RAM, it's the motherboard, it's the rest of it now that's starting to sort of bottleneck. It's not the SSD that's slowing it down. So,
I mean, I've got an SSD in my PC. It's like a 500 gig SSD. It wasn't super expensive, so I'm assuming it's not very good. It's something. I don't remember what it is, but Yeah, you say these newer Samsung Evos. I've never actually owned a Samsung Evo. I guess they're the top of the line, right?
No, the Pros are the top of the lines. The
Oh, I
Evos
see.
are basically the consumer version.
Oh, I see.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
I would always recommend an SSD over a hard drive any day. Even like a fast hard drive, the 7200 RPM ones. They're
Oh,
not
yeah.
fast.
Sure,
At
sure.
all.
But again, the difference is hard disk drives can be huge. You can
Right.
go
Yeah.
up to 4 terabytes, I think, on some of them, and they're also way cheaper. And so that's just the reality of it. But yeah, I mean, if buying a computer and you have the choice or the option to get SSD, for me, it makes a world of difference. This is an issue with the Surface Studio, which my review hopefully will come out next week. We just shot the video for it yesterday. But the Surface Studio uses what's called a hybrid rapid drive system, which is just garbage. but like these things exist for a reason, which is that it allows you to create like 2 terabyte systems or even larger while keeping costs down. And how they work is it's the best of both worlds, kind of. You have your SSD, which then is smaller, it's 64 gigs or 128 gigs. And there the OS lives, as well as like your most frequently used apps. And then you have like the slower hard disk storage, which is used for things that you don't access very often, or media, or stuff where it doesn't really matter that if it's faster. And in that sense, I kind of get it. I just don't get why you would create like a $4,000 PC and use a rapid hybrid drive system and not just go SSD. And you can upgrade the Surface Studio to a pure SSD system, and we'll be doing a tutorial on that, but it is not easy. It's not, compared to a laptop, it's way harder because you have to deal with this dual system. There's the hard disk and an SSD, and they're linked together. Like the OS sees it as one drive. That's where the Intel magic comes into play. And so you have to basically separate those two and remove them, and it gets a little weird. And so it's not an easy task. But I had a Dell XPS 27 years ago. Actually, I still have it. And that too had a rapid hybrid drive system, and I just did not care for it. Once you go pure SSD,
You don't go back.
It's really true. And I only said it because I have a laptop. The MSI 63VR has a hybrid system, and loading games on it, I just want to I was like, what's going on? And it didn't even dawn on me, oh, it's because it's actually using a hard disk for storage. I was just like, I got to fix this. Yeah, so it makes a world. So the lesson here is avoid hard disk drives if you can. If you already use an SSD system, upgrading to a newer, faster one will give you marginal improvements depending on what you're doing, but it won't be as big of a jump as going from a hard disk drive to an SSD was. So,
all right. I mean, that's like saying going from an i5 to an i7 will be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going from an Intel Celeron or a Core M, then sure, that's a great improvement. But if you're going from an i5 to a 7, less of an improvement.
Yeah, that's a perfect example that people always have to struggle with, which is the Core i5 versus Core i7. And there, the same rules apply. Some people really benefit from a Core i7, and it does have peak speeds that are faster. But if you're just kind of running Windows apps and everything like that, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Even for battery life, because they kind of idle around the same speed. So there's a lot of variables that go in there. But yeah, tough questions. We try to answer them. So hopefully that helps out a
It's
little
our
bit.
job.
But yeah, eventually we will be putting hopefully a 960 Pro into the Surface Studio, which does make a world of difference in performance.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, but
should we talk about CES?
Yes,
real quick, because we got 10 minutes.
Yep.
So
yes.
you know what's coming, or you know what's supposed to be coming.
Yeah, CES every year. This is the first year I'm not going since 2010. Although in hindsight, we decided I probably should have gone, if not to cover specific events, just to meet and greet with some companies who we're friendly with, and it's kind of a good chance to go behind the scenes with some companies and talk to them about stuff. So I'll probably end up going next year. Mark really wants me to go this year because Mark and I like hanging out together and hitting the burger shops. But I'm also kind of lazy and just don't want to fly out to Vegas right now. But CES, Consumer Electronics Show, pretty big. Microsoft pulled out of this about 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. So they used to be one of the biggest, groups there, and now they have almost zero presence. I say almost zero because Microsoft will be there. They're off sites, so they have like a private showroom thing where they meet with media and everything. But do not expect any major Microsoft announcements. Microsoft obviously saves this stuff for build, and then when they do these consumer events where they announce new hardware. So there's that. What we do is that there'll be a lot of new laptops coming out. The big thing to keep in mind is the NVIDIA 1050, which is the consumer version, version of their Pascal series video cards is coming out, and you'll be seeing a lot of laptops announced with that in there, which is cool. It's basically the equivalent of what the 960 and 965M was a year or two ago. This is like the replacement for it, basically. And so we're expecting the big thing I would say is the Dell XPS 15 is going to be announced, the refresh. Now, the other big thing there is the quad-core Kaby Lake processors are finally going to be announced and coming out. So you'll start to see higher-end laptops with a lot more power coming out. XPS 15 will have quad-core Kaby Lake, a GTX 1050. This will be optional, of course, with up to 4 gigs of video memory, which is very impressive, and an optional fingerprint reader, which Zach and I are, of course, very ecstatic about because if you read my Dell XPS 13 review, I'm super happy with that device, but the lack of Windows Hello is so apparent now when you compare it to what HP is doing and Lenovo. And I think they finally got the message. So XPS 15 will have an optional fingerprint reader. Not as good as a Windows Hello camera, but it's still super good. Like either one. I'll take either one.
It's better than nothing, as to say the least.
Right. And just being able to log in with that. So that should be pretty cool. That's going to be, I think that device, which, if you read my reviews, is still my favorite 15-inch, powerhouse laptop, basically for professionals, not gamers. You can do gaming on it, but it's more razor blade kind of stuff. But that's going to be an impressive laptop. And what's cool about that is Dell has done things in the past where they've made everything optional. So it allowed them to sell the XPS 15 starting at $1,000, which is really impressive for that device. That won't come with a GTX 1050. It'll just be a Core i3 probably, or Core i5 and a full HD display. But then you can scale it all the way up. You can go to a quad-core Core i7 with a 4K display, the GTX 1050 with 4 gigs of memory, fingerprint reader, probably have the 2 terabyte SSD in there. It's going to cost you probably $2,900, but that thing is going to be a beast, very impressive, very excited about that device. We are expecting stuff from HP to be announced as well. HP accidentally outed and this is funny because Dell kind of outed their XPS 15 accidentally on their website. HP kind of outed themselves with what's going to be a higher end SKU of the Spectre X360, which we recently reviewed. And one of the complaints we had was it was only available in full HD, even though the previous version had an optional QHD version. But we said that maybe they would still do that, and that looks to be the case. We can expect that in a black and gold color variant, which for people who didn't like the silver or had problems with the keyboard, contrasting for backlight, that'll be fixed. And it should have a QHD OLED display, which is going to be just,
amazing.
It's like the XPS 13, where I'm like, I don't need that QHD display. But as soon as you see it, it's so good. Mm. I remember when I saw the 4K XPS 15, I was just like, I'll take one. And literally, I was at a Microsoft store. I bought one because of that, because it's just so good looking. I expect the same experience here with the HP Spectre X360. So if you haven't gotten that device yet, now you're going to get less battery life. So not everything's for free, and it's going to cost a lot more. But still, that's going to be pretty cool.
See, in 2017, I'm looking to buy a new portable powerhouse. Whether I'm torn between the performance-based Surface Book or the XPS 15, I don't know which one I'm going to get. They both look so good.
Yeah.
We're spoiled for choice.
We do have a good problem these days, which is really good laptops. I'm seeing, we talked about this before, more and more Apple people considering PCs for the first time. You see that the XPS 13, the XPS 15 line, I think, are driving a lot of that. Those are different. The XPS 15 is a different class of device because it's a quad-core machine. And we talked about this before. In Ultrabooks, you typically see dual-core. That's the Surface series is the same thing. But once you go to quad-core, it's a whole other experience in terms of performance. And it really makes a big difference. It's the reason I chose the Razer Blade 14-inch because it's quad-core. Now, it's the Skylake quad-core, which is unfortunate. It's not Kaby Lake, but you get the GTX 1060, so, whatever.
Will the XPS 15 be quad-core Kaby Lake?
Yes.
Interesting. That's very good.
Yes. Yeah, so that's a big thing at CES. Like I said, Kaby Lake quad cores will be the big thing because those aren't out yet. And you're going to start to see all these companies announcing products and gaming laptops with Kaby Lakes, which would be really good. So better thermals, slightly better performance, better 4K video playback in HVEC, I believe it's called. So a lot of cool stuff with that. And then there'll be the smaller stuff. CES isn't just about PCs and laptops. It's actually mostly about, there's going to be a lot of wearables. You'll have your drones and all that stuff that we don't really pay much attention to, but very cool. TVs are also big there. So
fridges with Windows 10 built in.
Yeah. I always feel bad with the TV stuff because a lot of people get new TVs for Christmas, and then it's like literally like a week later, it's like Samsung's going to announce like their 8K curved 65-inch TV.
A lot of stuff at CES, a lot of things announced by companies are kind of conceptual still. Like even car manufacturers are there, like showing off some weird futuristic things that don't ever go on sale. But it's a cool. If you're into technology, it's definitely a cool kind of week, I guess, because it's just lots of ideas that companies have, and obviously lots of the products that announce they do come out and are ready for sale. But I think at 1 year, didn't Samsung or LG have a demo of a Windows phone that had like a bendy screen? Or was that it must have been CES, or it might have been Mobile World Congress.
I don't know.
It was like it was. I think it might have been a Samsung screen. It was like here's a Windows Phone screen, and you can bend it, and it was like a live image of a Windows Phone start screen.
I remember Nokia had that years ago. I saw and used that, but I don't remember Samsung. But yeah, it's true. So the laptop stuff, that's actually a really good point. So luckily, that doesn't apply for the laptop thing. So what gets announced by Dell, for instance, if they do the XPS 15 thing, I expect that day pre-orders to go live. They'll probably start shipping within 2 to 3 weeks. It's one of those things. It could be start shipping the week after. It could be start shipping in a couple weeks, depending on how fast Intel gets them the components that they need to mass produce, that kind of thing. But basically, all the new laptops that get announced most of them should be out within 3 months, but some of them will be pushed back to March or April. I know the OLED screens were announced a lot for Lenovo and HP. I believe both did OLEDs last year, but they were announced in January, really didn't start shipping until I believe it was like May. They got kind of pushed back quite a bit because they don't make those displays. They're relying on, I believe, on LG for that technology. And so that's going to be one thing that, they're have to wait on too. But at least most of these laptops should be out within the next few months. So,
it is pretty exciting. It's such a busy time, the end of years. It's like Christmas, then it's just straight into CES. There's just no breathing about it. Just Christmas, CES, and then there's nothing till February, I guess, till Mobile World Congress. Oh,
I remember just because, tonight for those, it's December 30th. Tonight is UFC. I'm very excited about because it's I don't watch sports, but I watch UFC. And I remember almost every year I usually I'll be like in the middle of traveling to Vegas when this UFC fight goes on. And it's just really annoying. I remember last year I almost missed it. And so this year I'm just watching it at home and I'm very, very excited.
Your feet up, no worries.
Yeah. So, but I won't be there, but Derek Kessler and Mark Wim and the guys from Android Central will be there covering stuff. So we will still be getting all that hands-on things. I'll be actually, this will be a good tease, working on reviews for other products. Expecting a Razer Blade Pro, actually, which, damn you FedEx. FedEx was supposed to deliver today.
See, you spoke too early on. Was it Twitter? It must have been Twitter. You was like,
yeah.
"Oh, I've got the new Razer Blade Pro coming in," and it didn't come up.
So we'll be reviewing the Razer Blade Pro. I still have a Dell gaming tower to review. Actually been playing with their new 24-inch gaming display, which I'm using with the Razer Blade, which is a pretty cool combo. So it's got the G-Sync and all that kind of neat stuff in there. I have the Surface Studio review coming out, so we got a lot more hardware things to do. I have a couple cases for the Surface Book that people may be interested in, the Waterfield ones from SF Bags, which are really kind of high-end leather bags. We've talked about these before. You buy them once and you keep them for 10 years. And so we'll be taking a look at that and some other things. So still lots to do. I'll be having fun with next week. Zach, what are you working on?
I should be, hopefully next week, be getting in the Xiaomi 12 Air, which is a Chinese OEM. They usually make phones. I'm pretty sure you've heard of them. But they've also got a Windows 10 laptop. It's like an Ultrabook. It's not a super powerful Ultrabook. It's relatively cheap. I mean, I can buy one for about 500 pounds, which is obviously way cheaper than the Surface Pro and whatever else. It is an Intel Core i3. From what I've heard, at least very premium. It does come shipped with a Chinese version of Windows 10. I'm getting mine from GearBest. But I will be doing a review on it, what it's like, whether it's a good purchase or not. And that should be pretty interesting. I'm also, hopefully at some point in the future, going to review the 38-inch LG ultra-wide monitor from obviously LG. That thing's a beast. I have been like, I just want one so badly. And
you do love those ultra-wides.
I do. It's the future. 4K is rubbish. This is it. This is what you want. You want wider real estate.
Yeah, I got to eventually clean up my home system here. I got to bring the Surface Studio home because it's at the office. And I also got to do something with my 32-inch 4K display from HP that I have.
Such a hard life.
Yeah. I'm thinking I got to connect up that one to the Surface Studio just to have this beautiful system. But yeah, that's just humble bragging, I guess, right there. But there you go. Oh, and I guess real quickly, I'll mention we didn't talk about much about putting stickers on your laptop, whether or not it affects the heat. I thought this was a really interesting question because on top of it, when I heard people asking this, it was mostly on the in some forums, specifically the Razer ones. These types of sticker systems are very popular for people who buy Razers and even some Surfaces, and I've used them on my Surface Book before. They're really good. Like Decal Girl and Dbrand are like some of the biggest companies that make them, but they're like high quality stickers, and you put on. And sometimes they're good if you damaged your device and you just don't want to look at the scratches anymore. You put this on top of it. They're also good if you don't want to scratch your device or you just want to make it look cool. And so, but people have this question like, yeah, but does it like make your device hotter? Because you're putting like a sticker over the metal and like maybe it can act as insulation. For me, I was like, it shouldn't. Like, that would be kind of weird if it did. But I was like, but this is bro science, right? This is where people are just like, well, it shouldn't, or it feels like it, or, So I was like, but we actually have an IR thermal camera. And I was like, let me just test this. Because I wanted to do it for the Razer Blade. I love the Razer Blade, but it's like the Dell where it picks up smudges and it just bothers me. It just bothers me so much. It's why I like silver laptops. It doesn't show this, And so I was like, the Dbrand, they make like a matte black skin, which is kind of cool. And I did that along with like a kind of striped metal one. But so I was planning to do this anyway. So I was like, all right, let me get the skin and I'll just do before and after. I'll game for a while. We'll do the thermals and we'll do the skin on it and do the thermals again. And I found zero difference between the two. Like, I mean, and I mean both for the peak temperatures at various parts where the vents are, where the CPU is and all that. I saw no difference, nor did I see any dissipation differences between how the heat maps spread out. And you can go watch my video that Mark and I did or read the article where you can see the photos of this and everything. And it's funny because some people are still like, yeah, but I swear my Surface gets a little bit warmer. And, I didn't count for every single device out there. And it will depend on how good your thermals are, I guess, on the device. But I really don't think there's any issue here that you should be like concerned about. And it tells you, I mean, these companies aren't like selling you stickers going, as far as I know, they don't say like warning your device may overheat and break by using this. But I like doing stuff like that. I don't know. It's kind of fun. It's like Mythbusters. You
Experiments.
Yeah, it's one thing to say like it shouldn't, it doesn't feel like it. It's another thing like here's a thermal images of it, and this is what it actually looks like. So I thought it was kind of cool. But yeah, so there we go. And we just come up over an hour, so we will go to questions, but not for the actual podcast. If you ever want to join us for our question and answer period, make sure you join us on Fridays when we record this live, and we'll do the Q&As kind of there. And I should also tease, speaking of questions, we shot another episode of Ask Dan this week. So I know a lot of people have been asking about that for a long time. We've been really busy and just doing a lot of different projects, and Mark lives in New York now, so but we decided we're going to start doing them. I can't say they'll be weekly, but we're going to try to do at least once a month, hopefully twice a month. I think is a reasonable goal, but we're going to try to bring this back, and a lot of people really like watching me answer questions, so look for a new episode of that probably
next year.
By the time you listen to this, it should be already live. But yeah, it should be kind of cool. So there you go. Everybody have a good new year. We look forward to covering more Microsoft stuff in 2017. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Take care, everybody.